It's time to get to Everton and we can speak to our Northwest reporter, Vinny O'Connor. Right, Vinny, great to see you. Welcome to the show. You were at Sean Dyche's news conference yesterday. What did he have to say about those PSR charges at the club?
I think, first of all, what's got to be said is I thought Sean Dyche handled it all really well. Remember, he's not culpable for any of the situation that Everton find themselves in, yet he was sticking up for the club yesterday. He basically said that it's been pretty tough to take this latest charge when you consider that over the last 3 to 4 seasons, Everton have been in the bottom 3 to 4 of Premier League clubs in terms of their net spend as well. And since he's been there, of course, they've let players go out of contract, some of whom ideally they'd have kept, but couldn't do that. They sold 3 young players in the timeline given as well to make sure money was in. And normally they wouldn't have sold those players as well. All this at a time when they're trying to build a new stadium and still also trying to find a way to be competitive on the pitch. I mean, he acknowledged, obviously, that there's been mistakes over a period of time, certainly in the transfer market, and that was before that Sean Dyche got to the football club. But in defence, mistakes in the transfer market happen because there's no exact science when it comes to player trading as well. I did ask him if he'd known what was coming along, whether he would have made a different decision when it came to taking the Everton job. But he said, no, I don't mind getting my teeth into something. But clearly, he feels that this latest charge, on top of the fact that they've incurred a 10-point deduction already, which is still pending an appeal, that appeal still to be heard before this latest charge as well, then the whole situation for the Everton manager at the moment is tough to take.
And this charge as well, an obvious question is, will it impact their business in this window? I mean, I think to myself, surely it has to, but then there is an argument against that as well.
Yeah, I mean, purely finance has impacted Everton's ability to move in the market at the moment. Remember, the proposed takeover by 777 Partners is still to go through. So effectively, financially, Everton find themselves in a state where there's no funds available realistically for permanent deals, not really much money available for loan fees or wages at the moment either. Everton, we know, have been borrowing money from the prospective new owners as well to cover stadium build costs, to cover operating costs as well. Richard Masters, of course, said yesterday that a decision from the Premier League on ratifying the takeover could still be weeks away as well. So that just holds things up even more. Would there be a potential change if players went out this window? Potentially. But again, Everton are looking at money coming in to cover the kind of operating costs that I spoke about. But there would be a need to obviously replace players if they were to let some of their big names go. The ideal scenario at the moment for Sean Dyche is that he keeps what he's built together without necessarily bringing anyone in. That said, you know, the money men at the club could take the decision out of Sean Dyche's hands were an offer to come in for the likes of Onana, for the likes of Branthwaite, for instance. But certainly Everton, in this moment at least, we've seen the link, obviously, with Calvin Phillips, and we know he is a player that has been of interest to Everton for a while. But Everton are in no state to be able to move for him. Plus, you'd imagine as well that with Calvin Phillips being at the treble winners, at the champions, not sure Everton is the move that would appeal to him at the moment either.
Yeah, OK. Let's just ask the panel about Everton in general then. What do we understand that they actually want to do in this window?
Well, I think the priority is probably keeping the squad together. And as Vinny was saying there, it's a case of they can probably only afford to buy or even afford a loan fee if they're to offload players. So it's sort of a case of you want to keep the squad together, but you might need to let a player go to bring another one in. I think when you look at goal scoring has been such an issue for them over the last few years. Dominic Calvert-Lewin hasn't scored now since October. They need somebody to try and score the goals. Maybe Beto will get some more opportunities. I think in an ideal world, they'd find someone like Seamus Coleman, who they bought for £60,000, and that would sort things out. 355 Premier League appearances now for him. But I think the squad's in not the worst health. I think it's a case of keeping all these players fit now, because I think the fringe players, when they've been given the opportunity, haven't necessarily stood up. So it's a case of keeping that first 11 fit and hoping they've got enough to get over the line and then reassess in the summer when hopefully the financial picture changes slightly.
Yeah, I mean, Coleman's one in a million, isn't he, really, from Everton's point of view. I think, as James quite rightly points out, you know, they've got to keep hold of their best players. And who are they? Probably Jared Branthwaite, probably Amadou Onana. Branthwaite is so good. A lot of the top teams are looking at him. He's got pace, he's got ability on the ball, he's strong, good in the air, he's got absolutely everything, and he will go on to be a top player, whether that's with Everton or elsewhere. But he's vital to keep hold of this month and then kind of see what happens in the summer. And then Onana as well, who is a top-class midfielder. And again, a lot of the top clubs are looking at him too. I think, you know, Dominic Calvert-Lewin is clearly struggling at the moment. underperforming his XG, missed a brilliant chance against Aston Villa at the weekend. But he's someone who you would think will eventually start to find the back of the net because he's got all the ability and he's proven previously that he is able to do that. So goals have been an issue. And then probably, it's going to be a winger or something like that if Danjuma leaves, who I know we're going to go on to talk about, but maybe a winger. If one goes out, it'd be one in. But keeping hold of those best players is vital for Everton in this window.
Yeah, and I also think that when you look at the players that you just mentioned, the fact that they're actually developing under Sean Dyche would leave them in a position where they're thinking, I'm at Everton, we're performing at home, they've got one loss in their last 4 games at Goodison Park in the Premier League. You're talking about Onana, who's gone from strength to strength, Branthwaite, Mikalenko, who's back in form as well. A lot of the players are doing really well under Sean Dyche, and that's what he does with his team. When the going gets tough, they almost come together and just ride the storm, and they're doing that really well. So I think the team is probably in a good spot, and they probably wouldn't be in a position to lose any of them in January.
Well, Dave mentioned Arno Danjuma. Let's go back to Vinny now, because it has been rumoured that he may leave the club this month. Is that a possibility?
I don't think so at the moment. And the rumours have been added to, obviously, when Danjuma posts on social media a picture of himself on a plane with that link with Leon and supposedly a loan deal agreed. And certainly we know of Leon's interest in taking Danjuma as well. Obviously, I asked Sean Dyche about that the other week. He just played it down quite a bit and was having a bit of a laugh, and tried to make a joke out of taking a player from Manchester to Liverpool that seemed to be taken seriously in some quarters. But for now, Sean Dyche says that Arno Danjuma is an Everton player. Obviously, again, as the boys say, if he were to go, he would need replacing. And clearly, Everton need cover at the moment if Dwight McNeil or Jack Harrison were to get injured, for instance. So to let Danjuma go at this stage wouldn't really make footballing sense at all. Obviously, things can change, and Danjuma may well fancy the switch, as they say. Obviously, Leon interested in him, and potentially he would want more regular starts. He's made just 4 Premier League starts for Everton so far this season. His 1 goal in the league coming against Sheffield United away back on the 2nd of September. But Sean Dyche will be looking after Everton's interests first and foremost, rather than an individual player in this circumstance.
And Vinny, let's say there is no business in January. Everton don't bring anyone in, and they do keep the players that they've got. Do you think that they've got more than enough to stay in the Premier League anyway?
I think you've all touched on it there in the studio, just how good a kind of spine Everton have at the minute. The likes of Branthwaite, the likes of Onana. Obviously, you've got the experience at centre-half of Tarkowski as well. I think if everyone stays fit, then Everton have got certainly a good starting 11. Where they have got issues is if injuries hit. We've seen that in recent weeks with Abdoulaye Doucouré missing. Obviously, he got injured against Burnley, missed the second half of that. Then Everton went on that run where they lost to Spurs, albeit they probably should have taken all 3 points of that. They lost to Manchester City, having taken the lead at Goodison Park. And then the performance where they really let themselves down against Wolverhampton Wanderers. What you notice when Doucouré isn't in the side is they haven't got anyone to replace his energy, not just his goal threat, but his ability to put pressure on the ball when Everton aren't in possession as well. Calvert-Lewin, the lads mentioned, not scoring goals, but at the same time, he's still the best focal point of that Everton attack. So he still is having an impact for Everton, despite not getting the goals at the minute. And you think that he just needs something to go in, and then he'll go on a run of goals. And we mentioned the wingers, of course, McNeil and Harrison, not much backup for them, obviously, if Danjuma were to go. Lewis Dobbin has scored, obviously, this season, but still not getting a run in the side. But I mentioned the spine of that team, and you go Branthwaite, Tarkowski at centre-half, Onana, Garner, Doucouré midfield, and Calvert-Lewin up top. The lads also mentioned Mikalenko, what a difference he's been this season, how he's improved under Sean Dyche as well. So within that side, they've got all the ability to haul themselves out of trouble. It's just whether all those players can stay fit, and Sean Dyche can consistently name that same starting lineup.
Sam, same question. Do you think without bringing anyone in, do you think Everton are fine?
Yeah, I think so. I think when even with the deductions, you talk about that and what they would be on if they didn't get that. I think they'll be 12th in the Premier League, and if they continue that form with the players that they have, and like Vinny said, if they don't have any injuries or any like shocking injuries as well to players that are playing key parts like Mykolenko, Branthwaite to their defence, because like Vinny said, their spine is so good, and I think most teams struggle to play against them, especially when it's at Goodison Park. If they're able to maintain that form there and maybe pick up some points on the road, I think they'll be fine.
Right, let's go back to Vinny and go from Everton to Liverpool. What about Liverpool, Vinny? Can you see them doing anything between now and deadline day?
No. That's all the messages that keep coming out of the club at the moment. I know people keep saying, oh, Liverpool need a 6, oh, Liverpool need a centre-half. I know Jamie Carragher's spoken about needing a centre-half as well. When we talk about them looking to bring in a 6 or looking to bring in a centre-half, the fact is that availability-wise, it's difficult to do. We saw in the summer how difficult it was to get 6 in. In the end, they were able to bring in Endo. I think Endo's done a pretty decent job so far, obviously away at the Asia Cup at the moment. I know a few people have been raising the question as to whether Jordan Henderson could come back, as we know that he'll be leaving Saudi in the not-too-distant future. But he is due an Ajax before the weekend, so I can't see him making an emotional return to Liverpool. But in terms of what Liverpool are looking to do, I think that everyone knows they're looking to bring in a centre-half at some point. I don't think it's going to happen in this window. The obvious caveat to that is, and it always comes along with Liverpool, if there's a deal potentially that can be done for a long-term target, then they will get it done. But I don't see that happening at the moment with all the noises that are coming out of the club as well. So, it's going to be a quiet window for Liverpool as it stands, but I'll always just leave that little caveat there about the potential to do a deal should something crop up.
Vinny O'Connor from your Merseyside mansion, thank you very much indeed.